Hello and welcome to Stampscaping 101. I'm just finishing up a card here. I wouldn't really call this a scene, but it could be a scene. This scene or piece could be just as easily have a lakeside cove or in here or something like a cabin or something like that. Instead I put this butterfly from Symmetry Sheet number 3. And I just wanted to play around with some of the new Dr. Martin's Spectralite paints that I acquired recently. Okay, I really love, I don't know, metallic, kind of iridescent types of inks, and I wanted to play around with the white and test that against the bleed-proof white that I use in a lot of my videos. These ones are liquid acrylics, if I refer to them as inks occasionally through the video, forgive me. But anyways, they make for a nice kind of medium to embellish pieces with, and I thought this kind of decorative design here of the butterfly would be kind of an interesting surface or design to apply those on. You can kind of see the gold where it's capturing or reflecting some of that light, like that. But I really layered some of it. I put like a white dot, then a gold dot, then a white dot on top of that in this video to create those types of little decorative elements there. And I was just matting this up, and I thought the green went fairly well with this piece. So I have different shades of green gel pens. So now that I have applied this green mat around here, I thought I would try to kind of work that color scheme into the piece a little bit more using these gel pens. These gel pens are like I don't know, 10 cents each when purchased in one of those large multi-pack sets. And unlike the sets of old, these new types of pens seem to work fairly well. The inks are thinner than things that I remember back in the day when, if you've been a crafter for any length of time and you bought those original gel pens, I don't know, 10 years ago or so, maybe more recent than that, you knew that some of these just, they didn't work. Some of them I bought brand new and they didn't work, but I don't know, these sets that I see reviewed online, most of them were I don't know, 4.5, 5-star reviews out of 5, and they worked fairly well. I'm just adding in these little decorative elements into the wings here, just to kind of tie in that green into the piece a little bit more. Okay, and I don't know, sometimes you do that occasionally. Depending on what color papers you have available, and then you can just kind of go back into the your piece again. And like I said, with things like gel pens, in those, my set came with 180 colors, so we're talking about having a nice range of hue and different values of each hue. It is really convenient. Used to be that I don't know, with gel pens I might have had 5 different colors at most, but this one here is that has some glitter in it, and this one's the neon one, I believe. So there's different types. There's the metallics, I don't know, regular tone, I guess, or whatever. When I say neon, iridescent, I think too. When you're talking about 180 colors, you're talking about, a nice range of, not only colors, but the types of finishes that you can play around with. So, anyways, see that green in there, in those wings, like that? Kind of brings the piece together a little bit more in terms of continuity and I don't know, just this overall cohesiveness, I guess, throughout the piece. And that's what you're, want to do. From a design perspective, it's similar textures, similar tones, whatever. If you walk through like a model house somewhere, it's not really practical as far as we live, but I just was looking at some different interior decoration whatever, not scenes, but elements, I guess. And you notice that they use the same color like in every room of the house and every bathroom, to kind of create this cohesion and kind of overall harmony. And so that's what something like this can do, and I'm telling you, I'm not one to really advertise other types of brands or anything like that, but when you have these pens in a set of 180, I bought these are like literally a dime each. It's really quite a nice, I don't know, benefit for, we can thank adult coloring books, for these being available. Alright, so anyways, kind of getting off the subject here, but little green effects in here like so. I was going to put kind of a gold mat around this, but I didn't. I was out of my gold paper, which I thought I was, but the green works pretty well. And again, when you're talking about different types of inks, or not inks, paints like this, I guess there's inks like this too, but I felt that these are liquid acrylics. I felt that the liquid acrylic would be a little bit more opaque, okay, rather than kind of a see-through translucent of inks would be, most inks. And I don't know, those little embellishments work out pretty good. I think there's definitely an application of this in like some kind of a more traditional scene. I wanted to have like beams of golden rays coming out. The one thing that didn't work for me was my dip pen. If you watch this video, I tried to use a dip pen. Now maybe I need to condition this pen a little bit more, but those inks just, when I was trying to make a line, it did it for a little bit, but then it stopped feeding, and I can see it just kind of hovering up here. Maybe it's the nib too, maybe it's a cheap nib, I don't know. But it wasn't feeding through that little split there. Even when I kind of used a lot more pressure and opened up that, I don't know what that slot is called, but it just hovered up here and it didn't feed, so I just used a little paintbrush, and that worked out fine, okay? But I don't know, those little embellishments are fun to add into a scene. Whether or not I could have just used a gel pen, maybe, I could have, and maybe that would have been fine too, but just adding a little bit more opacity to that, vignetted it a little bit more with some corners right here. But I don't know, just having that kind of raised little bead of ink, be it the white or the gold, was kind of nice on there. It's like this raised surface on there, and that kind of adds to this kind of little, I don't know, embellished look for the pattern on these wings here. So I don't know, a lot more experiments to do. Looks kind of, it looks okay like that, but it's really when you're capturing that light and it's reflecting that off of that metallic paint, does that really kind of shine. And then we have our light rays in here and kind of oscillating the rays, you know, from background to foreground is kind of fun. I added those rays in here, and then you really have to kind of work them a little bit more, I think, you know, to kind of change the I don't know, the intensity of them by adding a little bit more ink after you lay them down, and to kind of build them out like that is the thing that I find it that I needed to do. But that being said, all of that type of thing it's really fun to do, and you can really have a lot of control over it depending on how much ink you apply, and I recommend doing it applying very little ink at a time so that you have a lot of control over how kind of translucent or opaque they are. Okay. So anyways, just a fun little piece right here. I wanted to play around with my butterfly and to add in some different types of I don't know, colored and I don't know, metallic embellishments to it using those new inks. So if you choose to watch the video, I hope you enjoy it. And might look into a big set of pens like that. That really comes in handy. Gigantic set was, I don't know, like $25 or something like that, or maybe it's going up in price, it seems like that, but even so, from a 10-cent pen to a 13-cent pen, that really helped out in terms of you know, that little green hue within the pattern itself to tie it together. So anyways, thanks for watching the channel. Hope you enjoy it. Okay, let's do a little experiment here with the butterfly stamp that is the larger butterfly, kind of the Art Nouveau-ish looking butterfly. That's from not the Scenic Sentiment, Symmetry Sheet number 3. Okay, and that is a design that I did for some rubber stamp convention quite a few years back, and then I put it into production in a line of stamps called, I call them Symmetry, because they were kind of done in an engraved style featuring a lot of positive and negative space interplay. And that was kind of the style I was working in kind of my senior year in college. Alright, now I am working on a matte piece of paper here. It's fairly smooth though, so it gives me a nice print. And the reason why I'm working on matte paper here is I'm going to do a little experimenting with some new media that I purchased recently that I'm looking forward to getting around to using. That's the Dr. Martin's Spectralite Private Collection Liquid Acrylic. I think they just go by Spectralite. They look like inks, but they're liquid acrylics, okay? And this one's white, and this one says copper on it, but that is not copper. See, this one also says copper, and there's not two shades of copper. That's 36 PC. This one's also 36 PC. But look how different the colors are. That one's definitely copper, and that one's gold. So this Dr. Martin's got their they got confused with whoever was labeling these things, and got the gold wrong. I hope they didn't, mislabel hundreds of bottles, because I don't know if this stuff is coming off of a conveyor belt or something like that, and or if they're being hand labeled. I have no idea, what kind of output they have. But anyways, let's put a little bit of texture around this butterfly. I'm using the cloud cumulus here, okay? And the way I'm using the cloud cumulus is to create this illusion that the light is coming from within this piece from the center, from the butterfly itself, okay? So what I did was I inked this up, and then I wiped off a really good portion of this top portion right here. I got rid of all that black. I mean, it still prints out, but it's more of a kind of a gray scale, version of the ink. Okay, see how it transitions off like that? So it's going from a little bit darker to a little bit lighter as it transitions out into light. So that's kind of the idea of that. So I'll show you where I'm kind of wiping it off. Wipe off a really good portion of it here. Probably going down about an inch to half an inch to an inch or so. Really wiping off the top portion of it, and then as I move down into it, taking off a little bit less ink, but I'm being pretty liberal with the removal of ink there, okay? Because we're starting off with a very light, dark color in black, so you can really, be pretty vigorous as far as the process of removing that ink right there, okay? Because it still prints out fairly dark if you don't. Okay, now I'm not going to bother masking off this butterfly. I mean, you could, but I plan on putting in some colored, I don't know, these ink embellishments into it. So, I don't know. I have no idea what it's going to look like, but, we'll see. But I plan on just kind of going into the pattern and adding in some additional, I don't know, I guess flourishes, kind of like a, I don't know, maybe like an illuminated manuscript or something, I don't know, something like that, where they would possibly have some gold leafing or something like that. I mean, it's not going to look like that, but that's kind of the idea of these embellishments on there. And I don't know, we'll see what it looks like. I'm hoping it looks kind of elegant, okay? Alright, so there's my butterfly right there. It's already looking a little bit dimensional. I mean, it really fills in around that, and I think that butterfly kind of pops out a bit. It looks like the light is coming from kind of within the center there. To me it does. Alright, so that was really several impressions with the cloud. When I stamped it down here, the cloud was facing up like that, okay, because the tops of the billows are illuminated. So if the light is coming from here and I have the cloud up here, you have to kind of spin it around and have it underlit like that when you're stamping it here. When you're stamping it off the side, then you have the cloud facing this way, okay? Same thing on this side. Turn it around, and that way the light is coming from in there. So you can always kind of direct your source of light by the direction of this cloud like that, If the sun was coming in, or if this source of light was coming from up here, then I would probably stamp it here, and I mean, if this butterfly wasn't in there, always facing kind of towards the light source. All right, so that's kind of a fun way to use that stamp to define lighting within a scene. Okay, now let's see. I need some of my sponges. I just cleaned a bunch of my stylus tools now. I'm looking for them. Ah, here we go. I wanted to clear my desk off. I cleaned about, I don't know, it must have been 150 rubber stamps. Last night, my desk was so cluttered. And all of you know what I'm talking about if you're a crafter. It just gets to the point where we're working in such a tiny, limited amount of space, and I don't know. We kind of let it go until we just can't do it anymore, right? And why not? That's it's the fun. I don't clean up, to an immaculate state after every project I do, I don't know, some of you might, but I don't. Okay, sponging in some tone. I want to reiterate my lighting directions. So in these clouds, I'm going to transition from dark to light, okay? Dark to light, dark to light, dark to light, so on and so forth. So it looks like the center is really giving me that illumination, okay? And it just makes it look a little bit more three-dimensional. I mean, we already have, you know, some dimension to the impressions themselves, but we can reiterate it with the use of some additional tone, creating additional shadows. In this case, it'll be kind of more like along the lines of a vignette, you know, where you have it darker on the perimeter and lighter in the middle, and that provides, compositionally speaking, a nice kind of focal point and kind of a framing of the composition. Alright, so here's what I'm doing, okay? I'm just kind of keeping this in a little area like this. See how I'm not pounding this, or I'm not doing this type of thing. Alright, like that, and getting a bunch of oval shapes everywhere, okay? It's just kind of a light dabbing like this, okay? And then I'm getting a little bit of a transition like that, okay? So you just kind of work a small little area and get that tonal transition established. So when you ink up your applicator, what you're doing is you're just working it in a small area like this, maybe half an inch or so, kind of moving it around a little bit, not taking huge jumps or anything like that. I have a very light touch on this, okay? And I'm really condensing the tappings. Now see, I'm barely getting anything off of here because the ink is so dry. That's what you want to work with, but here's what gets a little bit more precarious, is that people go like, oh my god, it's dry. Ink up, tap, yeah, right? And that way, when that happens, you start getting more of this. Okay? So don't get too impatient with that, okay? Just be very patient and allow the ink to do its thing. Allow the drier incarnations of the ink to do their thing, okay? And they'll build up, nice and gradually, and you'll get those nice transitions of grayscale tones of whatever color you're using. I mean, you can be doing this in whatever color, okay? And you'll be able to achieve a nice transition of value. And you'll have complete control because of the rate of application, okay? Which is pretty slow, okay? So it's nothing like, you know, like Chinese calligraphy or something like that, where it's very spontaneous and you get the whole thing like instantly, okay? It'll happen just nice and easy and slowly. It'll all kind of come into focus, you know, at a very gradual rate, meaning that you'll have a lot of control over it, and you can control how much you lay down. So remember to, you know, kind of take a step back, you know, meaning hold this at arm's distance and see how it's looking to you. Alright, now I plan on adding some kind of, you know, some tonal embellishments in here, or I don't know, maybe textural embellishments using some gold and whatnot. So I think I am going to go in here a little bit and add a little bit of tone, like grayscale tone to some of these wings maybe. Alright. The reason being is because I want that white to show up on there a little bit, okay? So I'll kind of leave the interior maybe illuminated like that. Okay. Now this is just all an experiment. I mean, maybe, you know, I am kind of considering, well, maybe I should have left it light and maybe come into it with, you know, a color or something like that, but I'm just using black right now to make a grayscale, and we'll see how it comes out, okay? So it's still a little bit illuminated from the interior there, but we do have some tone now on the wings, okay? I'm going to use a dip pen on this scene, and I haven't done that, used a dip pen in so long, so kind of curious to see how that goes. I love things like, I don't know, I just love different types of art supplies. I mean, I don't use them, but just like fountain pens and what do they call them, quill pens, or I don't know how you pronounce it. Glass pens, I love all that type of stuff. And I have a glass pen too, but you know, that stuff I'm not really any good at, but I sure love the idea of it. Anyways, we'll give it a shot. I'll try not to embarrass myself too much here. Okay. I think that's about right for that. Alright, now I'm going to use that gold on here, so I want to kind of tint this in a warmer tone, just to kind of set the temperature. I mean, that gold looks really great for warm temperatures, okay? And this is kind of a cool temperature right now. I mean, it's neutral grayscale, really, but I don't know, it looks kind of cold to me. This is Peach Bellini. I tell you what, maybe I'll use something that maybe more people will have. Let's try a distress ink, okay? Let's go with like an antique linen or a tea dye right here, okay? I think that antique linen is lighter. Alright. Now I have a little bit of the Peach Bellini on here, but no big deal. Alright, doing a little color tinting. This is kind of like, oh, I kind of make it akin to like old black and white photo tinting kind of processes. You know, back in the day there was photo tints where you print out a, you know, an old black and white photo, or I don't know, it could have been a new black and white photo, but and with very pale values of various different hue, you give a little bit of coloration to your old prints, or your prints, black and white prints. And this is kind of doing the same thing. It's, you know, it's not a very dark color, right? It's very light, and that's what those photo tints were back when people used to do that. I'm not even talking about, you know, super antique photographs. I mean, when I was in college, well, I guess maybe that's considered an antique, but it was so long ago. But you know, I took photography classes, and going to the store I'm in, or, you know, it wasn't very long ago where you can walk through a photo supply store, and, you know, in their accessories area there were tints for you know, your photos. I never used them, but I don't know, I took a look at them once in a while. It was usually some old product that had been sitting on the shelves for years and years and years and never sold, you know, from what I recall. Okay, adding a little bit of this temperature and warmth to the butterfly. I hope I'm not going too dark, but we'll see. antique linen. Let's try, let me try the tea dye. Let me see if that changes the hue a little bit. It might have a little bit more of an orangey look to it. Nothing too extreme, but yeah, it's different enough to go ahead and use it. Warrant using it. It's not a waste of time or something like that. Sometimes certain colors are very close to one another, and you know, you really don't need to use it if you're using it. If you have another layer of something underneath, but this is enough, you know, of a change of hue, I think. Let's go ahead and change it one more time to a walnut stain. Okay. Always kind of tap it in some of my darker areas to, you know, see if I can get a feel for it in terms of how much darker it makes the corner there, and also what color it looks like when added to a scene or a project. Okay. Now, let's add a little bit of drama to this scene. How much? I don't know. We'll see. But let's kind of create this flaring effect coming off of it. We have our source of light, which is kind of this backlit butterfly here. So I'll have some light rays coming out from it. And, I don't know, that's one of the things that I was kind of planning on utilizing in terms of kind of a light flaring type of thing with these inks right here. But let's see what this looks like first without anything else. Taking a Q-tip, and I'm kind of loosening the tip there in terms of the fibers, okay? So you just kind of have to unwind it a little bit, you know, just to get it the consistency you want. If you want a soft application of something, you have to kind of use a soft applicator. Alright, so let's take a look here and see what we're going to do. Let's have something kind of, you know, it's kind of a, I don't know, semi-explosive. Okay, now I'll figure, maybe I'll kind of have the center be kind of the mid point right in that. I forgot that part of the butterfly, what it's called. Okay. Let's say something like that. Okay, so that's going to be a beam of light coming up here. So let's see, which side did I unwind? Alright, now this pad of mine is it's a color box, frost white. It's fairly dry, so it's not going to be too overpowering in terms of how much is applied. Okay. I'm adding more ink kind of towards the source of my light, and as I move away, there'll be less kind of this application here, okay? There's kind of a beam, an isolated beam back there right now. It looks really weird because it's just this one isolated thing right now, but let's make it a little bit. Oh, let's just do these really light beams first, and then I'll add some more ink later, I think. But let's just kind of get these this beam kind of structuring established. Okay. So always going back to my main part of the butterfly. Now, let's see if I can get this more centered for you to see. Okay. So kind of midpoint right there. And what I'm going to suggest is that you change your beam size once in a while so that it isn't quite so redundant, okay? That's one of the things I've kind of had to learn. You know, kind of vary it a little bit. Okay, so beam like that. I mean, there's no set formula or anything like that as far as, you know, how many of these you should add. You kind of have to just kind of watch it develop as you go along, unless you're able to visualize things much better than I can in terms of looking ahead. And I have a little bit of an idea, but it's far from, you know, definitive, right? It's usually more of a vague concept, and I really don't kind of visualize like an end product too much. It's usually just kind of a, you know, a very weak kind of hunch. So let things develop, you know, in other words, that's what I'm saying. And I wouldn't worry about it or think about it too much, you know. You'll just work on what you're doing at the moment. Okay. Kind of getting there. They're very, right now they're very, very, close to transparent, okay? These beams. I mean, they're certainly translucent, you know. As you can see the beam, but you can really see a lot of what's going on in the background, though. You know, when I'm laying this over. Okay. So there's that on the top. And, you know, we'd be missing something if we didn't have it kind of coming out, you know, on some of the sides here as well. I can see I'm starting to get a little bit, you know, too similar in terms of the size, though, so maybe I'll do some kind of thicker beams around here. Or, I mean, it could be anywhere, just as long as you kind of have some variation in there somewhere. Getting there. That's a really big one right there. So maybe next to that, I'll do a pretty small, narrow beam, okay? That one is really, really transparent. We'll do another narrow one. Guess something like that there. Alright, now I am going to pause this video and finish some more and continue them around here, and I'll restart when I've done that. I think you get the idea of where this is going, but this is not compelling watching, doing the exact same thing for 15 minutes in here or whatever it is, so let's pause this and move it along. Okay, this is where we're at. That took me an extra, I don't know, about 10 minutes or so to finish this side right here, and I think right now it's looking fairly dimensional. As I was doing this, I was thinking, instead of gold, maybe brass would have been more appropriate. This kind of looks like a brassy looking foundation as far as the color scheme goes, more than gold. Maybe it would have been good to use a little bit of yellow in here or something like that. I guess I could still do it in the butterfly wings, but I don't know, maybe, I don't know, maybe I'll put a little bit on there. But let's take a look at these rays here. The rays are okay. I think I can alter them a little bit in terms of tweaking them with a little bit of a lighter shade of white on kind of portions of them. They're very sharp right now, and that looks okay, but I think what I like to do these days is kind of alter it a little bit. Let's go to the Hero Hues. It's a little bit more opaque. It's still translucent, but it's slightly more opaque than the color box, okay? So what I'm doing is I'll go on the top of this ray right here, okay? And I'll just... Now I have to watch out for this one. This ink here is... This pad is brand new, so I'm applying a lot more ink as well, so... I shouldn't have put so much on here, but I'll just use a very light touch, okay? But see, just on kind of one side of the ray like this, it kind of gives a little bit more character to that ray, having it more opaque on one side, and then as it curtains off, it's lighter down there. Or it's darker, it's just, it's more transparent of a ray, but see that how much brighter it is in these. Now I wouldn't do this on all of them, the whole idea is to go for some variation. So let's hit a couple of these in a couple areas and let's see what that looks like. Now, see, I'm just using one side of this paper because I don't want to get the whole thing here, so it brings a little bit more dimension, I think, to these beams of light, which are no small part of this. I mean, they're a pretty significant part of this composition, right? I mean, they're very dominant as far as an element goes. So, kind of just addressing them and, you know, dressing them up a little bit is kind of nice. A nice thing to do. Okay. See, it just looks a little bit more dimensional like that. Okay. And, you know, I'm someone that likes some variation in my different elements, just to kind of avoid you know, monotony as much as possible. I mean, pattern certainly plays a part into things, but, you know, how much of similarity are we talking about? We got some beam of light. Let's play around with that beam of light a little bit. Okay, that's the one right there. It's a little bit lighter than this one. Okay, it's a stronger beam. Maybe it's coming out closer to us. Who knows? Okay. I'm looking at this one. Maybe I'll do a little bit more of that. I think or did I already do this one? Well, we can add a little bit more. Okay. I'll transition this off a little bit where it's lighter up here and darker down here, just because I don't have as much ink on it. Okay. I think that looks about right in terms of the variation. Okay, maybe this beam up here is like super huge, so let me add a little bit more to that one. Or a lot more. I'll transition it. You can notice I'm kind of flipping this around and going to using this other side of the swab here to kind of spread out some of that ink if I put too big of a blob down. Okay, that looks about right, I would think. Alright, we'll do some of their little special effects in here later, but let's play around with some stuff. Okay. Alright, we have our, again, Dr. Martin's Spectralite. Look how messy this is. I have another video of the unboxing of these, and the white one was kind of broken and it got all over my other bottles, so, but I don't know, they did replace the white, of course, but my other bottles are kind of polluted all over with white paint at this time, so oh well. Okay, now I don't know what types of little embellishments I'll put on here. I'm trying to think about it. I'm going to try a dip pen for the first time in really many years, so I thought I would lay down some different types of little embellishments on here and just go from there. We'll see what it looks like. Okay, now I really shook these up beforehand, which is something you have to do. Okay. All right. Let's see how it goes. I should practice with this a little bit. Gives me a pretty fine line there. All right. It's a very fine point line. Let's see how that goes, okay? Alright, now there's a lot of little details in these wings, as you can see, okay? I'm going to go in and just try and reiterate some of that. Some of this might be more, I don't know, might be better with like a gel pen or something like that. Alright, now this is a little bit wet. I'm going to put this down here so I can lay my hand down like that. Let's see if I can get some decent marks. I'm trying to see if this ink is setting up on here, or this paint. It's not really flowing down to the tip real well. It's either that or I just need to work faster. Okay, let's see here. Getting the hang of it. Trying to find the hang of it. Okay, let's see. I don't even know if these liquid acrylics are something I'm supposed to be using a dip pen with. Alright, that is not flowing. Let's see. Yeah, it's not flowing down into the tip here. Is it too thick? Trying to figure it out. There's some of you that use dip pens that are like screaming at the screen right now, probably telling, trying to tell me what I need to do here. Let me shake this up a little bit more. Alright. Brush technical pen. I don't know, it says technical pen, so if you can put it in a technical pen, I would think that you can use it with a dip pen. Let's give it a shot again. Okay. Alright. There we go. Got it, I think. I'm fighting this medium here. It's not working with me as far as the dip pen goes. Let's try. I wonder if the gold will work. It kind of works, and then it kind of clogs up in it. It could be the pen nib too. In terms of that, let me try my number 4 brush. Okay. See how that works. This brush is kind of flaying a little bit. Let me see if I can get a fine point on it. Okay. All right. It works on the scratch paper, huh? Then as soon as I get it down here, I think it starts setting up so fast. Okay, now, see, I'm just kind of starting in some of these portions and kind of working them back. This is a light tone, so the light is coming from the center, so I'm just kind of reiterating that a little bit with the paint here. I've done this type of thing with the bleed-proof white, which is a opaque watercolor by Dr. Martens. This is a liquid acrylic, which is different. This one is more translucent than the opaque, the bleed-proof white. I mean, that's the specialty of that bleed-proof white, is that it's so opaque. This one's not too bad, though. It's nice having a little bit of a translucency to it, because it kind of covers up for my clunky application. You know, and that it's not giving me a super definitive white mark. Okay, so it's happening in here. What I'm doing is I'm doing these types of marks like this, okay? Like that. Okay. Like that right there. Or that's what I'm attempting to do. In somewhat of a... I'm attempting to do it in a nice and graceful manner, but... Okay, now this is working now. You just kind of keep doing it, you know, working it, pulling it, and I think it adds up to a kind of a nice texture, I guess. You know, this is where adding some tone on these wings kind of comes into play. If there was no tone on the wings, then you wouldn't be able to see this, because I'd be just painting white into white, so... Just kind of going in and reiterating some of these little swoosh embellishments, or I don't know, just any kind of the different elements that are within the design. So just little I don't know, whatever little dots, white dots in here. You just kind of go in and reiterate that with some, in this case, acrylic dots. Okay. You can certainly do this with a like a gel pen as well. Okay, kind of going in there like so. It's kind of like I don't know, in some form or fashion, it's like kind of just going in and coloring at this point, except I'm doing it just in white. Okay, see how that kind of really brings out that wing there. Maybe at the front of these areas right here, maybe I'll go a little bit more opaque with a heavier white. A little dot maybe. Okay, it's starting to become a little bit more free-flowing the more I do this, kind of figuring out where to add things, kind of getting the hang of it, I guess. I'm seeing just kind of textural opportunities, really observing the design too. Okay. Let's see. What do you do with this? These types of things, that it's like the spirit of this image changes, it kind of evolves in some way. Dots here and there if you want to, little embellishments. I put a lot of time into these wings here. When I was doing that design, I figured, my thoughts were, well, if this is the last butterfly I ever draw, then I really want it to be, you know, pretty, you know, spectacular as I can make it. So just kind of adding in those types of things, you know, just making it more and more decorative. And while the wings, I mean, they're similar from left and right, they are different though if you look at them carefully. I don't want them to be mirror images of one another. Okay. Some of these are kind of getting a little bit more dimensional. Alright. I think we might be ready for some gold on here. Let's see what that looks like. Or maybe there's room for a couple little other things on here. Okay. Oh, one of the things that I wanted to do too was I wanted, you know, in addition to these flares coming out of here, like these beams, okay, I wanted there to also be some kind of like flares coming out, so maybe I'll do that in white here. Like some smaller ones maybe, but maybe as it moves kind of out, representing kind of a flare, kind of coming closer to you in the foreground. Maybe I'll make some of these circles quite large, kind of adding a little bit of a sense of space to the background. I guess in this case, some of these larger dots will be the foreground then. It's kind of like an explosive kind of visual, having these textures kind of, you know, in various sizes. Alright. There we go. Some of these little blobs of paint are quite large, so all this makes it a little bit more kind of dimensional. Alright, let's play around some of these different other colors, okay? I need to go and wash off my brush tip here, and I'll use the same tip. I guess we have moved away from my dip pen. That dip pen will be used for something else because I really like using that. Maybe it'll be with some inks. Maybe not on this scene, but we'll see. Okay. Okay, we have our gold. Dr. Martin's Spectralite. Okay. It says copper, but that is gold. Alright, now what I'm finding about this Spectralite, this stuff really dries pretty fast. I mean, this is a big blob of ink right there in a couple of these spots, but I think it's meant to dry very fast. Maybe that's why I was having the problem with the dip pen. Unless it could be me too, you know, because I really don't know what I'm doing with these things, but that's what it felt like. It felt like it was setting up really fast. Okay, let me see if I can figure out how these work. I wonder if I should, seeing as how fast these are drying, I'm going to take a... Is this suction working on here? This suction doesn't even seem to be working. I don't know, maybe this thing isn't working. I don't know. Interesting introduction to these inks. Mislabeling that little dropper thing doesn't seem to work. Okay, but the colors are beautiful, I think. And it's drying really fast, and that's good too. Anything for the piece, right? Doesn't matter what you have to go through. As long as the end result looks good to you, and it's a reasonably fun process. I think if I just get to know these things a little bit more, all will be well. Okay. Where am I going to add this? I think I'm going to add this roughly in some of the same places, so I'll kind of multi-layer some of these little dot embellishments on here. So it just kind of gives them a little bit more depth, I guess. I mean, I guess you can go with multi-layers. You can go white, then gold, then white again, you know, or something of that sort. It might be kind of interesting. It kind of does give, you know, a little bit more dimension to the imagery in terms of creating that depth. Okay, I think I will do that. Maybe I'll go back to the white just to give these like gold embellishments a little bit more kind of layering, I guess. So now you can kind of do this, something like that. Large, medium, small. I mean, these are all fairly small dots, but relative to that space right there. See that gold right there? What kind of glistens. So, I don't know, I guess I'm making something that's pretty ornate anyway, in terms of the design, even more so with doing, you know, these types of effects on it. See, I'm not covering up that white completely. I'm just kind of doing a little bit, part of it, and you can see that white underneath. Kind of showing through here. See that? And then we'll put another little dot on top of that, so it'll be multi-layered. into the come into some of the black too. Jeweled butterfly for sure. Okay. I think that's about right with that. I think I might add to these beams too with a little bit more of I don't know, maybe gold embellishment or something like that in terms of like a gold gel pen, something like that. Kind of going crazy with it. It's definitely not a subtle application of this. I'd say it's fairly bold in terms of a texture and kind of effect. See that right there? That's what we're going for. That. See how it really comes to life like that. It's interesting. It kind of becomes more gold-ish. Kind of when it dries like that. When it's like a big blob of it right now. It's really wet. So, anyways, we'll wait till this dries a little bit and come into it again. And let's see. I'm trying to think if I want to add something more to it with like a pen like this. This is a Uniball Signo Gold. Let's see if that'll even kind of show up in theory. Yeah, that looks pretty good. I think it should show, but do I want to do that? Like a beam coming out like that? I don't know. Oh. I wonder if I want little golden spheres coming out of there too. Oh, why not? I don't know if I have any more gold paper that will would work really well for matting this, or one of the colors of the mats. Let's see if I have some. Alright, now I was going to stop this video and just kind of allow this to set up a little bit, but let's hit some of these white, I don't know, kind of solar flares here. I'll go with the Hero Arts pigment ink right here, Hero Hues, okay? And let's give a little bit of a a flare to some of these, or glow to some of those dots that I laid down. See, there's way too much ink on here right now. Okay, you kind of want it where it's more of a dry brush. Okay, here it comes. Yeah, there's still quite a bit on there. Okay, that's better. You don't want it to where it's going to leave you a big blob of ink, so really remove a lot of it before you, or just don't put as much on to begin with. I put too much on to begin with, you know, where I had to really tap a lot of it off. Just be very sparing, go very sparingly with the amount of pigment ink you use if you're doing this type of effect where it's just supposed to be this kind of like glow around some of these dots, or if you're doing fog in a scene or something like that. Just go very easy with your application, and you won't get many blobs of kind of paint, you know, ink. In this case, pigment ink, of course, but it's almost like, you know, using paint. This is kind of going in and adding a nice little glowing texture to, you know, these little paint balls, white paint balls. You can do them with a gel pen too, or instead of, you know, this. The paint that I used. Alright, I'm going back in. I end up doing putting a glow around most of these, even some of the small ones. I thought it looked okay. Let's see what it looks like around some of these golden ones. It kind of looks a little weird. I won't do that too much. Alright, so here's these all glowing balls of paint. The white ones on the perimeter in the background. So it looks like that. Alright, now let's see if that gold is... I think on this side it's really set up. This side it's almost set up. Alright, we need to go back in and clean my paintbrush one more time. Go back to the white and we'll see how that goes. Otherwise it's looking a little bit too strong in there. I don't want that gold to be so I don't know, dominant a texture. I want it to show, certainly, but not like that right there, where, you know, it's so dark within the lighter areas of the wings. I'm happy to say this acrylic just really washes out of the paintbrush really easy and beautifully. It comes out really, I don't know, goes back into solution just fine and cleans it really good. Okay. Now I want a bunch of different colors in this Spectralite. I'm thinking if I had like a aqua green or something like that, it'd be kind of nice in here. You know, once again, I'm just kind of adding this to a portion, going over some of those little dots in there just to change it up a little bit. See this right there? It's white, then gold, then white again. You know, giving it that type of look right there. Okay. definitely like to layer things and create depth, and this is just kind of another, I don't know, kind of another method to do that type of thing in a, you know, a little bit of a different type of imagery. Certainly more decorative and ornate. I'll try doing this to something kind of more, I don't know, scenic stamping-ish, where we kind of break out of the more kind of realistic look to go for more kind of stylized and decorative pieces. I mean, I can see this kind of like golden sun rays or something like that coming out, or, you know, something, I don't know, weather-related or whimsical. Okay. Trying to think if there's any other place in here that I want this. And I also am contemplating kind of like some sort of foreground in here. I mean, it looks okay as is, as like a study for this type of texturing or something like that. But I was thinking about something like this in the foreground, like that, you know, just to add some kind of dynamic foreground. This is called the Curvy branch, and I'm wondering if I could put it over that, though. I'd have to do it, definitely have to do it in something thick like a VersaFine, but I think it can add to it. I don't know, embossing might work even better, but I don't know if I want it so dimensional. I want it dimensional, but I don't know if I want it that that dimensional. Alright, let me see here. This was the original kind of idea here. I was thinking about this, but kind of during the process I started kind of questioning, you know, if I really want it in there, and I don't know. I don't have anything to lose if I don't like it. It just might not stamp over some of these pieces in here that are really quite dimensional. Those, you know, those big drops of paint on here. So, but we'll see. All right. I do see this as, I don't know. It's just like butterflies kind of represent what, all kinds of things, but it can represent kind of growth and life and whatnot. And, you know, in terms of context, I think this, you know, kind of branch kind of reaching up and growing can certainly reiterate that type of, I don't know, sentiment or symbolism, I guess, more than sentiment. Yeah. And plus, I don't know, it gives us something kind of different from the bottom of the composition to the top. Yeah. And hopefully this adds a little bit extra depth, but we'll see. We'll see if this even works at all. Oh, okay. Actually, that stamped out beautifully on top of that. Thank heavens for the VersaFine. The VersaFine is a black pigment ink, okay? If you don't know what it is. Alright. I'll put another one over this way. First one went here. Second one I'll put over here, maybe. Let's go for a third. It's a little awkward looking to me, so let's come in something like here, or here, maybe here. definitely doesn't lack for kind of an explosive kind of look to it. We'll see what it looks like when it's matted. Okay. It's definitely ornate, that's for sure. I'm not sure if I want to put anything on these pieces. Now, those will have to wait till to dry quite a bit, but I don't know, it's so busy in the background with the butterfly, I don't think I'm going to do anything to these branches in here. And one thing I think that this piece could do, you know, could stand is a little bit more vignette-y and a little bit more kind of darks on the edges, the four corners, but I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. Okay, let's see here. Not great, but not bad. I could bring some of these beams out kind of into and in front of these, or through them, maybe. I'm not really sure. I don't know, but that might bring a little bit more dimension into it, but we'll figure it out. Okay, going to let this set up overnight to dry. Everything else is dry though, even the that paint, the liquid acrylics, but definitely not the VersaFine. VersaFine requires a little bit of time. Okay, I'm back. I have allowed this to dry for about, it's been about a day now. The black from Marvy is quite different than the black of the VersaFine, as you can see, but we'll go with that just in terms of creating that depth. I probably prefer that to be a little bit darker, so we'll see how it looks when I spray this, and this will be in the front of the video as far as the results go, but I'm pretty happy with this, just in terms of some of the different effects here. I think there's some things that we can do here, though, to make this a little bit more dynamic. And one of the easiest things to do would be to bring into the foreground some of these little flare types of things, these little balls of light. And I think some of the larger ones can be kind of coming through the foreground foliage. Okay, so what I'm going to do here, let's just make it quick this time. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my gel pen. I don't know if I could have done this originally. I think I needed the paint to do that. Some of those acrylics in here to get some of these effects onto the butterfly when I'm layering it like that. I don't know. Hard to say, but I'm not quite sure how some of this would have laid down on top of one another. Like, for example, if I took a white pen and did a larger circle, and then I took a gold pen and put, you know, another circle over that and another circle over it with the pen, I'm not sure if it would lift off. I suspect it might. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm adding this down. Well, I don't know, it looks okay. So I'm drawing this gel pen mark over the top of some of that liquid acrylic, so it looks okay. I'm just putting, what I did was I stamped over some of these larger dots with the curvy branch. So the curvy branch is then in the foreground, of course, because it's nice and opaque and solid of a black. So I'm just reintroducing some of these larger dots to the foreground and just drawing it right over the black again. And then what we'll do is we'll apply the pigment ink, white pigment ink over the top of that, again, to make them kind of more of a glowing looking sphere, okay? Some of these in here need to be redefined a little bit more, just for a little bit more of a kind of a dynamic, I don't know, presence in terms of a foreground element. I know it's just a dot, but they can play quite an important role in terms of defining the dimensions of the piece. Okay. It all kind of, this is not, I don't know if I would consider this a land, you know, scenic stamping element, but it uses the same principles. Okay. In terms of creating depth, there's background, midground, foreground, we have the sky, we have the source of light in here. It just uses different imagery. So that being said, you can really do this type of thing and use the same kind of principles and elements for any type of scenery. I mean, if you really wanted to make something really, you know, some word stamp in there, super dynamic, you can have a word stamp in there and have that light coming from behind it, you know, and it could say happy birthday or something like that, or instead of that, you know, butterfly or a lake or something like that, it could just be a birthday cake or something of that sort, you know. Alright, let's create a little more dimension. One thing I'm kind of surprised at was the liquid acrylics in some areas dried a little bit more translucent, okay? Lighter than it looked, I think, when I applied it. I thought it would kind of retain some of the lightness, but you can use it to your advantage if you can have somewhat of a range of opacity, translucency, whatever. You can have, see that, like right in here? Okay. These are a little more translucent. That white doesn't stand out too much, okay? But now, if I go in and I add some gel pen dot to a part of that, we can make part of that dot a little bit more opaque. And add a little bit more dimension. That one, I don't know, I can't see it too much, but it's a little bit lighter here and darker up here. So, adding slightly more of that dynamic range to various elements, I think can, I don't know, add a little bit of visual excitement to the surface here. Okay. Alright, I'm getting a little bit more liberal with my use of the larger white dots. I just think it could use something like that. It's supposed to be kind of exciting, and why not make it even more so? Yeah, I mean, I guess there could be kind of an incidence where, you know, you just kind of go over too much. But what I always say in my classes and whatnot is I'd rather have someone go way too far with their application of everything, imagery, color, textures, highlighting, whatever, than to kind of always hold back on everything and to never kind of achieve, you know, at some point in time the maximum kind of resolution of a piece or the maximum finish of a piece, you know. If you add too much and you know, you think, oh my gosh, I should have held back a little bit, but then you'll know where, you'll have a better sense of kind of where to stop in the future on future scenes. So that's what I do on mine. I always just kind of overdo it sometime, and that's just fine. If I was working on glossy and I overdo it with something like this pigment ink, you can always just wipe it right off. On the matte paper, it tends to stick a little bit more. Okay, now maybe for some of these larger dots, maybe I'll create kind of a larger perimeter glow around these larger dots. And this scene right here, or this piece, I really can't wait to see what it's going to look like when I mat it up. This is a piece that can certainly benefit from kind of a nice matte, complementary matte in terms of the colors that you can use, especially for the fact that I used a metallic. But gosh, I don't know if I have any gold anymore, or if I replenished it. I don't remember. I'll have to see. Gold mattes look really great around a lot of different scenes. It could be I like it around sunset scenes or reddish scenes, but it also looks great with purples and greens and whatnot. Okay, I think that looks a little bit more dynamic. We have the glow happening in the foreground, like that. We have it happening in the background too, so we get that texture from, or element from the background coming into the near foreground area in both the top and bottom areas. Maybe let's extend this one out. Let's make it a little bit more dynamic. Kind of glowing sphere. I usually don't do them so large, but it's occurred to me I should probably do that sometime, you know, just to create that, you know, I can utilize this element to create defined depth within the scene. I usually do it with foreground elements, but when you have something like this, or those flares like that, it can really add to it, I think. Alright, so there we have it. I am looking at the light beams, and I think the light beams, you never know what they're going to look like when your ink dries, okay? And just in general, what I found is that pigment inks seem to dry darker than what they look like after you apply them, okay? So, ew, too much, okay. Okay, see that? kind of defining the top portion of it and kind of just letting it hang a little bit. We have the bottom portion of it defined too, but I don't know, I'm finding it kind of looks a little bit more interesting to have a varied beam of light in terms of kind of the strength of it, I guess. So I can kind of start it a little bit lighter down below, or towards the source, okay? And then as it kind of moves away, you can have it a little bit less. Okay. I'm using the Hero Arts white here. It might be interesting to come through some of these bushes here. Maybe I'll do that on one. Okay. Something tells me to just leave it as is, but oh, I might as well give it a try. Okay, so what I mean by that is I'll have this kind of beam of light coming from behind some of these branches, but then I'll have it come in front of the others, so it looks like the beam is kind of a little bit more dimensional. It's kind of weaving its way through one of these foreground elements, okay? So it's both behind and in front of, okay? Like right here. So then how it comes from behind, and it goes in front of that branch. So, I don't know, I think it looks a touch more dimensional that way. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. I wasn't planning on doing any of that with the bushes, but I think that works out okay. Let's do it on another one. That. Okay. And it's hard to see some of these beams because of so much foreground elements now. Okay, I think there was a beam right here. I mean, it doesn't really matter if there was one or not. If you want to add one, there's definitely not a point in time when it's just too late to do that, like I'm doing here. Oops, let's see. Move that up a little bit. Okay, so go with something like that. All right, now final touches. Those are usually my final touches on a piece. But one of the things that I was thinking about when I looked at this is because of just there's so much activity and visual kind of it's kind of, it's loud, but you know, there's a certain kind of volume to it. I thought I would mellow that out a little bit more with some additional vignetting. Alright, I'm going right over that one right there, but I'll just have to sacrifice it, that dot there, just for the sake of framing, which kind of this vignette does. It's putting these darker corners on the piece. Okay, so that it's kind of containing it a little bit more when you go one step darker here, you know, in the corners. You make the interior seem one step lighter by contrast. Okay, and I think you could use a little bit more contrast. Okay. Black and gold and white. It's my high school colors. I'll have to try these colors in a kind of a more traditional scene. Let's see what we can come up with. I do like those acrylics were fun to use. I'll have to try them in a different application though. Let's see what I can come up with. Alright, so we have our finished piece right here in terms of the scene, though it seems kind of unfinished with a matte. But I don't know, just in terms of playing around with some of that pigment ink in there and all those different kind of gold effects. Alright, you can see it better, you know, with it reflected like that. See that? It makes for a pretty rich kind of a, I don't know, tapestry of a, I don't know, embellishment. And those are kind of fun to do. Might be interesting to have like a crystal or two up here or something like that, huh? And you can see some of those golden little pieces down here too. Alright, I'll have to see if I have a good supply of paper to choose from as far as selecting a matte for this. Probably black or something like that around the perimeter and gold, but anyways, kind of a fun little experiment here with the Spectralites. I'm probably not utilizing them. Well, I know I'm not utilizing them to their full effect, but I'll have to play around with it a little bit more. I want to kind of expand the range of the media that we use with scenic stamping, and I don't know, there's a whole world of different types of inks and paints out there that I don't know, we haven't tapped into enough, and I don't know, it's always kind of fun to experiment. So anyways, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. And yeah, look all over the place for different types of pretty cool media.